I think that kind of leads us on quite well to, dress, same sort of principle, but this is stuff that we've already covered when we were talking about looking at a pleat. So there is your pleat. You can measure how deep that pleat is. You can then just put a little bit of tension on the bottom here. And you can see it's, you can see that's going up to nothing. So you can do the same thing again. You can just draw that out, and then at the end you can cut through your pattern and put the volume in that you need for this one and this one. That's how I would do it. Instead, if you prefer, you can do it all by incremental measurements. So you can say, right, I'll mark up the center front, I'll mark across there, then I'll get to this point, and then you can pivot it by the amount that you need, and then mark it again, then pivot it again, then mark it again. And then you can draw on the side seam. Is that clear? It's a perfectly reasonable way of doing this as well. But quite often you forget something along the way. Maybe you've only done 3 rather than 6 in there. Maybe something slightly miscalculated. Maybe it's got a bit stretched as you've done it. I just generally find if you lie this flat, you calculate what those 2 are, you get this panel really nice and flat right from the start, and you just allow those to sit there out to nothing, and that one out to nothing. You can pin it down if you want. Really get your center grain and the center front right, this right, trace around, and you just cut, open, open, up to you. Now, with something like this, and chances are you're not going to want to do this, but there may be a situation that arises where there's something a bit like this that you do want to do, and you don't want to unpick it, because you know it's your best friend's prized dress that they would absolutely kill you for taking scissors to. So you need to somehow work out what this volume is. Anybody got any ideas on how we work out what sort of volume is in this?
Measuring?
Where?
In the middle.
In the middle. So straight down here. Okay. So yeah, we could. How do we know for sure that it's the same in the middle as it is here, though?
How we combine it, we can pull it, then we can get the actual length. Like we can pull this one to the exactly the length, then measure with the small one, so we can know how much fold.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it's the same principle. We're saying measuring in the center. Yeah, I think you're generally pretty safe to assume that those will be strips, straight strips that have then just been gathered in. But if you want to be that little bit more sure, the nearer that you can get to this, the better. So the first thing you would most likely do is measure there, and then you can try measuring here. So you say, I mean, you can see that if we get as close in there as we can and we just walk the tape down, at least you know pretty much that, say that is roughly the same measurement as that, then you know that this is going to be a straight strip. It's just another way of checking something like that. Another thing to always look out for is, it looks a bit stretchy, right? So it's probably on the bias. So that also is going to distort the amount. And in this particular case, it doesn't really matter because we're doing something that's just for effect. But in a situation where you actually really genuinely need to know exactly what that is, always allow for whether it's gone off grain. And you can lose, I mean, even in a piece that size, look, we can lose 5 mil to a centimetre in accuracy just by putting a bit of tension on it. So always important, if it's off grain, don't just handle it with care to get what you need out of it. Exactly the same principle if you're wanting to trace this off. Because this is quite a almost kimono shape, it's not going to have any fitting in here, because as soon as you put a curve in here, you're going to get weird lumps again. It's the same principle as the center back of a trouser. As soon as you put a curve in this and a curve in this, you're going to get a funny lump there that you don't really want. Whereas if you want this to fit far more like a fitted sleeve, well, this is a seam that you would then use to create some of the shape to go under the arm. But again, this would be straight to about here before it then starts to curve under the arm. So these lines that are just going to lie flat on the body, they will be straight. Because as soon as you start putting shaping into those, you get weird bubbles that never looks good. Whereas, so if you imagine this seam was used to create some mimicking of what a sleeve is really like and a more fitted sleeve is like. It will be something along the lines of it going and then that way. And so this one here, for example, this one here will be, let's just say it's straight like that. This one will be straight and then going this way. This one will be straight and then curving down this way. Does that make sense?
On this pattern?
Actually, not on this pattern, but I'm just saying if, for example, that seam was used to create a bit more shape, then that's how they would have done it. So this one goes off this way and this one goes off this way. And you see that's essentially the same principle as a trouser because, again, we're just dealing with a tube to house something, a limb that is coming off our main torso. It's exactly the same principle. This stays straight, which is this section here. And at a certain point where we want this then to be doing something going under the arm, that's where the curve begins. That's almost always a rule. The only exception is then if we wanted a really funny, weird shape in there, in which case then this would be doing that, and this one accordingly would be doing that, but they would actually be running parallel. Do you see? So whatever this one's doing, that one's doing, so in effect it still stays flat, even though you've got a really interesting shape in it. Now, I'm saying this because it's most likely the garments that you're going to pick up, I don't know, from op shops or really sort of staple shapes that you're beginning with. If you go picking up a Westwood garment, for example, or any garment that has a very sort of unusual and interesting way of cutting, any sort of garments that have a sort of a more intellectualized approach to the way that they will do something unusual by clever cutting, then a lot of these principles will then suddenly not apply. You'll find, using the example of Westwood, that a lot of it is cut with square edges that are then folded together at right angles, which create a lot of volume. So dramatically different result in proportion because of very unorthodox cutting, which is in a lot of ways far more geometric and far less about following the ergonomics of the body, which is what makes it fantastic. For the interests of getting the information out of pretty sort of standard shaped garments that follow the ergonomic form of the body, this is pretty much all you need to know. You just follow those rules. Okay? If you're talking about garments that have drape, I haven't actually brought an example of that, but they, again, you can still use the same principle, but it gets a whole lot more complicated because you're trying to get your way into drapes. So say something has a drape that folds in a really unusual manner. You need to somehow identify what the grain line is most of the way through that, and you need to somehow work out how you then get that bit that's gone that way onto your pattern by just step by step going through and working out where the grain line has gone, using a tape measure to measure how far under it's gone, starting to calculate that with points on the paper. But yeah, you can appreciate that when something is draped and you can't get it flat and it's quite complex, this and common sense and a grain line is really the best you've got without picking it apart. Okay? I think that's probably the basics for you. Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, so